Okay, so one of the questions I got asked in the comments on the other video was, what was it like when we, as a company, Aston Martin Lagonda, moved from Feltham to Newport Pagnell? Now that happened in between sort of 1963, 1964, and like a lot of these things, it was a sort of gradual move across, really. Once we'd pulled out of motorsport officially, there was no real need to remain at Feltham. Feltham really is a bit of a misunderstood site, because by the time we got to that point, production was really being made at Newport Pagnell anyway, but headquarters was Feltham. So if you have a DB4, it's got Aston Martin Middlesex Feltham, because that's where the car company was based, but the cars were made at Newport Pagnell. And up until that point, engineering and racing were located at Hanworth Park in Feltham. But we first of all need to kind of rewind slightly, because how did we end up there in the first place? So after 1926, when the first company, Bamford and Martin, went bust, it was bought by Batelli and Bill Rennick, Bert Batelli, Bill Rennick, and it was moved out to Victoria Road in Feltham, an old aeroplane factory which we took over. We were there all the way through the whole of World War II. By that point, we'd stopped making cars, making aeroplane parts. Once David Brown bought the company in 1947, what he got was half a factory, effectively, because the factory had been bomb damaged and the 15,000 square feet were missing. He also bought Lagonda, which didn't have a factory at all, because the Lagonda motor business was sold off separately from all the other smaller companies that Alan Good, who owned Lagonda, had been buying up. So he kept all of those, kept the factory, and sold basically the name and the motor division to David Brown. So we've now got two workforces to try and combine together. Roughly, probably about 120 or so Aston people, maybe a bit more, and I'm not quite sure the exact number of Lagonda, but you're probably looking at around about a combined workforce of sort of 300 people to accommodate. So half a mile down the road from Victoria Road was an air park called called Hanworth Air Park, which had been originally set up as a civilian flying club in the 1930s, became a training establishment in World War II, and then a repair facility for aircraft. So perfect for moving a car factory into, combining the workforces, making Lagondas, making DB2s initially. They left the service department at Victoria Road, so that carried on servicing people's cars, and that actually remained there until 1954. Then it moved down to Hanworth Air Park, and by that point production had transferred to David Brown Tractors up in Huddersfield, where the DB24 was being made, with the replacement for the DB2, the hatchback car, and the engines, gearboxes, chassis was all built at David Brown in Huddersfield. The bodies were shipped in from different coach builders from around the UK, including Tickford, who made the open top cars. And the cars were then assembled, sent back down to Feltham, and they were PDI, pre-delivery inspection, road tested, and then delivered from Hanworth Park, which is why they've still got the Feltham chassis plate on them. And also lots of people remember seeing the cars being built or being road tested locally. Well, that was of course because the cars were being shipped down from up north, and nobody really went around shouting about the fact we were making them in a tractor factory. Probably, as you can use your imagination, it probably wouldn't have sounded that great to would-be customers. So they kind of had kept the illusion of them being built at Feltham. So then production, once we bought Newport Pagnell, bought Tickford, which became Aston Martin Newport Pagnell. By 1955, the Mark II version of the DB24 came into production, and that carried on through to the Mark III, and then the DB4 was built there as well. Sorry for talking quickly, but I'm keeping an eye on the time because this will run out of memory again if I'm not careful. Apologies for that. So there we are. So we're now kind of explaining what was made where. We'll go back to 1963 again. So no point staying at Feltham. Let's move everything up to Newport Pagnell, where the cars are being made. One big problem was that a rumour went round the factory that David Brown was thinking of selling the company, and that put people off of moving physically from London up to Newport Pagnell. And at one point, almost all the workforce were going to be moving, and by the time it went through, about 18 people, I believe, actually went through with the move. So we ended up with a shortage of mechanics for servicing. That was the bulk of the staff that we had at the time. So Newport Pagnell then had to go and recruit people locally and train them to be Aston Martin mechanics and coach builders and trimmers and painters for the service side of the business. If you know the geography of Newport Pagnell, close by is a town called Wolverton, where they made railway carriages, rolling stock for the railways. So there was a good supply of handy kind of people, if you like, who could make things and turn their hand. And actually, apparently, back in the day, we didn't lose too much in the way of customers or any kind of hassle with moving up to Newport and recruiting all those people. People were really, really good straight from the word go. And those handful that did come up obviously worked with them and trained them, and really no problems at all. So it's quite funny, isn't it, that all this time we've all thought about Newport Pagnell, which is, you know, where the vast majority of cars were built from that period onwards. But of course, Feltham and Hamworth Park in particular played their part. There is a house at Hamworth Park called Hamworth Park House, which became a hotel back in the 50s when we were there, and often you see our cars photographed outside it. It's the only bit still standing. All the factory itself was long demolished and fell apart. The foundations are still there, and we're hoping one day that the house will be restored. Check out on Facebook, Hamworth Park House. You'll find a group of enthusiasts that are looking after it, and it's incredible amount of information about the site and a little bit of Aston stuff mixed in there for good measure as well. But there we go. Hopefully, I'm sorry for talking so quickly, but hopefully that's told a bit more of the story. Well, let's think of something else to talk about another time. Happy to go either backwards or forwards. My specialist subject is the 90s onwards. But I hope you're all enjoying the videos. Hope you're keeping sane. And I'm sorry for doing this from the inside of an Austin Allegro, but I haven't got an Aston Martin to hand, so it'll have to do, I'm afraid. If you like all this rubbish, have a look at my Instagram page. You'll find me under Aston Allegro. Anyway, take care. Bye-bye.